Hey guys, NJ here, welcome back to the video. This is my part 2 deep dive on DCS running on the Steam Deck. If you haven't already seen part 1, maybe you want to go check that out first. That's a good overview showing you performance, how well this runs on the Steam Deck, and how well the controls can be configured. Obviously I wanted to gauge interest on that before I went into too much detail, and it looks like there is good interest, so this is now that part 2. Just before I start, I wanted to mention extremeskins.co.uk. Now this is not sponsored, they didn't send me anything, bought these with my own money. Now there's a lot of different skins out there on the market and they really vary in quality. Extreme Skins, certainly if you're in the UK or Europe, I really suggest going on this site. They've got a great configurator, the customer support's fantastic, and more importantly the quality of these skins is really good, durable, they look fantastic, they're easy to apply. I've used fairly low quality skins, or what I thought were going to be high quality skins, and trust me, there's a lot of variation in the quality of these products. So yeah, worth going and checking those guys out. Links in the description if you're interested in that. Now there's a few things we need to talk about with DCS running on the Steam Deck. Now you can run the SteamOS version of it, that's absolutely fine. It won't work out of the box, which is something we're going to cover. I'm specifically running the standalone open beta, which I think many people do, which is the kind of cutting edge version, which gets all the new features early. And you know, if you're impatient like me and you want those nice and early, you'll be on the open beta standalone. Now, in terms of prerequisites to this video, I can't handhold you through this whole process. This video will be literally an hour. So there are some things you'll need to go off and research yourself, but they're things that are very well documented and there are lots of videos on YouTube about. One of the first of those things is adding a non-Steam game. You'll need to download DCS Open Beta as you would on your PC, but in SteamOS, in desktop mode, you'll need to add a non-Steam game. Go and type adding a non-Steam game into YouTube, you get floods of videos showing you how to do that. I'm not going to handhold you through that. Now, as I said, this won't run, but it will be installed. You'll have that ready to go. We'll go through those next steps now over in the desktop mode. So here we are in desktop mode. We're talking about prerequisites now. Another thing you will need to do is, well, if you want to replicate my setup, my performance, and I think this is a very important one, is install the Cryo Utilities application, which is by YouTuber Cryobyte33. Really nice guy, absolute Steam Deck Linux guru, and has created this little app which makes things fairly easy in terms of setting up a larger page file, setting up faster page file swappiness, and he also talks you through the BIOS tweak to increase your VRAM frame buffer from 1 gig to 4 gigabytes. Again, go and search in YouTube for Cryobyte 33 and he will walk you through not only how to install this but why it's a good idea and give you lots of performance metrics. Again, prerequisite, I'm not going to handhold you through that. Go off and do that. I think that makes a huge difference for good performance in DCS. So we've talked about that. We've talked about adding a non-Steam game, which again you will do here. You can see add game. When you click there, you've got add non-Steam game. Lots of videos on how to do that, and you need to install, if you're like me, the standalone version of DCS World Open Beta. Now there's two things you'll notice here. I have a separate add non-Steam game for the DCS updater as well, because when you launch DCS in Linux, it will try and trigger the updater, but that won't actually work. So you need to run that separately. I think that's a good thing because you're in control of, you know, when these updates are done. So I add the in the bin folder of DCS, you can add the updater as its own separate non-Steam game and run that as and when you need it. So DCS installed will not work on its own. There is another app we need. Just quickly, you'll notice I've got various different artworks here. Yours won't have artwork. You need to add that yourself. I use SteamGridDB to do that. There's actually a plugin for SteamOS now which allows you to use SteamGridDB. It comes up as an option to change artwork within SteamOS. Again, lots of videos on that. Go and search it in YouTube. It makes adding custom artwork very, very simple. So let me just minimize this. One of the apps you're going to need definitely is here, and it is called Proton Tricks. Let me just launch this up. So once you've added your non-Steam game, it will come listed in here You can see I have my non-Steam shortcut DCS. I'm going to click on that. That will appear once you've got this installed. Now, one of the points of failure when you go to run DCS is it has a shader compiling error, and then it just won't work. And this is where Proton Tricks helps sort that problem out. So what you need to do here is, now I've already done this, I'm not going to actually apply it, but I'll show you what you have to select. So you want to tick select the default wine prefix, click OK, and then up at the top here, install a Windows DLL or component. Then we're going to click OK. This is going to take a second to go off and mess with that, and then it's going to bring you up some a nice list of things that you can install. There's only one we're interested in, which is down here, and it's called D3D compiler _47. You need to tick this, okay? And then when you press OK, you're done. It's as simple as that. It might take a minute to do it, and then for some reason, I don't know what it is with this, it does sometimes just keep bringing up this window. As long as that tick is there, you're done. Okay, so tick it, click OK, and then if this window comes up, just keep hitting the close button. You see I have to do it a few times here, 3 times, and it's gone. Anyway, that's done. DCS will now launch. So we can actually launch DCS. Again, we want to do this from desktop mode. We don't want to do it from the within SteamOS just yet. Now, one of the problems you have when you launch DCS, you get the DCS splash screen, but you'll also get your login, and the problem is with the login text box that comes up is it's hidden behind the splash screen, and you can't get to it to actually type in your login and tell it always remember, which you'll need to do. So what you can do if you need to move a window, and I can show you with this as an example with the Steam window here. If you've got your splash screen up and you've got the login window hidden behind it, you'll have the little taskbar icon for it. You can see it will come up when you hover over it, but the problem like this. But the problem is if you click on it, it still won't come in front of the splash screen for you to be able to log in. So what you need to do, let's imagine this is our login window. We're going to right click it. We're going to go to more, and then you're going to click move, and that will automatically attach it to the mouse. And then what you can do is just move your mouse off up to the top right, away from the splash screen, and from there you can then click on it and type your login details. But please don't forget to tick on the remember me box so that you don't have to do that again. Once you've done that, it will go through and it will launch DCS and you're good, at which point you can close DCS. We can go back into the gaming mode, and then we can launch DCS from there onward without any problem. So that should get your DCS running. You will need to do exactly the same step there with the SteamOS install of DCS if you're running that, but certainly for standalone, whatever version, you need to do this step in order to get things running. So let's now go back to the gaming mode, and we'll pick things up from there. Okay, so back in gaming mode, there is DCS now shows up. We're going to click on that. There are a few things we can do from here. So in terms, let me just quickly cover this. So in terms of the custom artwork, I did mention it. I have plugins installed via Decky Loader. Again, if you want to know about Decky Loader and that's new to you, YouTube's your friend. YouTube search is your friend, certainly. So what I have is, let's see, these are all the, I think there's 5 of the most useful plugins for you right there. But if we go to Steam Grid DB, that's the one I've installed, and what that does is it now gives me in the settings icon change artwork, and this directly links to Steam Grid DB, automatically searches DCS, and now you can see I can choose what kind of poster I want. I can choose the wide capsule, I can choose the hero. You just select it and it automatically applies the artwork for you. Absolutely brilliant. So you can set that up dead easy. So that's that covered. Now there's one thing here in launch options. I borrowed some launch option tweaks from the Steam community that are already running DCS on Linux. Now I'm not sure that all of these are necessary, but these tweaks have certainly not harmed. So I'm going to put these launch option tweaks into the description. You can add them. It's certainly not caused any problems. Might help with a few bits and pieces. So yeah, I'll chuck that in if you want to add those launch options to this. But if we now launch into DCS, we can take a look at what I have configured in there. So I've zoomed us in a little bit here so we can see things a little clearer. Let's first have a quick look at my settings, because I know people are probably interested to know how I have this set up. Now, you certainly don't have to go crazy at all on the graphics to get a really beautiful image on the Steam Deck, being that it's a very compact screen. But there are a few things that I've done here just to get it, and I've tested and messed around with. But of course, if you want to mess around with this, you can experiment to your heart's content. But this certainly has given me a really good quality locked 30 in pretty much most scenarios, and it feels beautifully smooth. So I've got texture set to medium, terrain texture set to low, civil traffic low, water low, visible range medium, heat blur low, shadows low, secondary shadows are off, resolution is the native 1280 by 800. Then we have resolution of cockpit display, I have at 512. I do like the high res dials, that's important to me, so I keep those where they are. MSAA and depth of field are off, lens effects none, motion blur off, clouds are set to standard and look great. And then the SSAA, SSLR and SSAO are off. You can see where my sliders are position wise, feel free to experiment with those. I do have rain droplets on, VSync on and full screen ticked, and then my anisotropic filtering is set to 4. Terrain object shadows are flat, cockpit global illumination is off, font scale 1, which you can change that if you'd like, being that it's a smaller screen you can scale that up a little bit if you like, and the scale GUI is set to 1 as well. So those are my settings, and again, look at the part 1 video if you want to see how that runs, but it all works really well. Those are my main settings. The next thing to do, really, let's go on to the kind of the main meat and veg of this video, which is to talk in a bit more depth about the way I have the controller set up. So let's jump into the game and have a look at that. Now, I know one thing that was requested a lot from the last video was to upload my community layout so that you guys can, that'd be a nice shortcut for you, or certainly a place to start. But it is just that, it's a place to start, because really this is more about you understanding how to configure this than it is copying my layout. Because even though it's amazing that we have enough controls to be able to get the aircraft functioning well, and you can really tweak to your heart's content, one thing that you do have to bear in mind is this is going to be really on a kind of aircraft to aircraft basis. Some controls will be universal and some you're going to need to map yourself. So even though I have uploaded my community layout, and I can show you that quickly. Let me go press the Steam button, move across to controller settings, and then there you go. So you can see it's set up NJ Tech layout DCS. That's my community layout. So if you want to download that, you can, and you'll have what I have. But as I said, there's more to it than just get it. The things that are working here won't work without you doing some tweaking within DCS control setup as well. Some of it will work because some of it's universal. So let's go through some of that right now. Specifically, let's talk about the stuff that is universal. So what I've done, as I said, with the Valve have done such a great job at making this control layout universal. Making this control layout absolutely brilliant and flexible, and just globally, once you've learned how to use that control setup, you can just use it across anything you run on the Steam Deck, and it's one of those things you have to get in the weeds with it for the better of your knowledge of using the Steam Deck, whether it's DCS or whether it's any game. Is really worth getting to understand this control setup. It allows you to map and take anything like a trackpad and kind of make it anything. Take a joystick and make it anything. Make it a D-pad. Make it a scroll wheel. You can really customize this. So let's start off with the left trackpad. If we go in here, let's go to edit layout, and let's go down to the trackpads, which is here, and I'll show you how I have this set up. So let's have a look at the left trackpad first. So I actually have that set up as a directional pad, okay, and then I have the up here. on the D-pad, when I click in on the up portion of the D-pad, that is now going to act as a directional pad instead of like a traditional, like a mouse pad or what have you. And then I have the escape key there, so that will be universal for all of you. F2 is on the left, so that will give you, in DCS, that gives you the exterior view of the aircraft. Down is F10, which is the F10 map, which allows you to get into the map overview. And then right is F1, which gets me the cockpit. So I have cockpit, I have map, I have external view, and I have the escape key to bring up the escape menu. Now, when I click in on the center of the trackpad, I have that set as the right mouse click. Okay, and that's because I use this side as a traditional mouse. So that is working, as you can see there, it says as mouse. And then I have left mouse click on that because I'm moving around with this as the mouse. I click on it, that does your left click. The center of this, if you click on it, does the right click. So that covers both of my mouse clicks. This covers the use of the mouse. This is now directional pad, up as escape, right as F1, left as F2, and down as F10. Now that bit is universal, that is global, I should say, to every aircraft that you'll be running in DCS. So that, I think, obviously works out really well. One little tweak that I did here on the left trackpad, if we go to the settings icon of the directional pad, I've set this pad as a 4-way no overlap. Now what that does is reduce the chance of, see, if I hit up in the right top right corner, and this was set by default to 8-way, which will have an overlap, or does it have over? I can't remember if it says it will have overlap or not. Hold on, let me have a look. Yeah, 8-way with overlap. So basically what that means is if I click up in the top right hand corner, that would give me a combination of this one at the top, which would be escape, and this one F1. I don't want to accidentally press both of those together. So 4-way no overlap means that you have a much bigger kind of dead area. So when I press up here, there's no danger of me, if I press slightly to the right, of me accidentally triggering F1 as well as escape. So that's one little tweak that I made there to that, and that pretty much covers how I've got the trackpad set up. So let's move on and have a look at the joysticks. Now, left joystick I've got working in a traditional way. It's operating the flight controls. So let's take a quick look at the left joystick. So you can see it's just a standard joystick. And then I've got left, when you click it in, it is operating as a left joystick click, which then you can map to whatever you want. Nothing clever about the setup of the left joystick at all. Now the right joystick, this is certainly a bit more interesting. So I have that set up as a directional pad, and I'll show you the purpose of this. If I go back to the main game and I press the F10 map, obviously this will work as the standard mouse cursor in the F10 map, and I can click and hold to drag the map around. But actually zooming in and out, so I'll need a mouse scroll wheel. Like, I've got a physical mouse here, and what I need to emulate is me scrolling in and out like this. Now you can actually map a mouse scroll wheel, you know, as mouse, and then mouse scroll wheel to the right joystick. It doesn't work. I don't know why it doesn't work in DCS, but it doesn't. And I was trying to find a workaround, which I have now. So I've set that up as a directional pad. So the right joystick is a directional pad, and then up is scroll wheel up, and down on the joystick is scroll wheel down. Pretty simple, but that will only equate to one click of the scroll wheel up. So when you push up on the joystick, it will zoom one increment of the scroll wheel on the mouse. What you actually want is to be like, you know, as you hold the joystick up, you want it to be like scrolling the mouse wheel. So the way to change that is to go to the settings wheel of scroll up, which is here, and then we go to settings, and then we turn this on, hold to repeat, turbo. Again, I just love the flexibility and customization options of the this valve control setup. It's just magical. Anything you can think of, this thing will do. The repeat rate is kind of how many times per second it's like turbo button, like on the old third-party controllers for your, you know, Sega Master System or Saturn, or, you know, it depends how old you are. If you're like me and you're old, you remember all that stuff. But yeah, it's like the speed of the scroll wheel. I find the default to be absolutely fine, and I'll show you that working. So if I go back here you'll now see as if I hold this down, that's the speed at which it zooms out. If I hold it forward, we've now got that repeat mode. It's like continuously scrolling the mouse wheel, and I can zoom all the way in. If you want that to be faster or slower, you can set that accordingly now. But that works perfectly as a scroll wheel for the map. So now I can navigate around the map, I can zoom in and out. Map operation is now pretty much a breeze. So that's how we have that done. If I click to the right of my left trackpad here, that will get me back into the cockpit. If I press to the left of the trackpad, we've got F2. Again, I can use the mouse to scroll around. One thing I pointed out in my last video was that I have kind of an inertia, so it acts like a trackball, and that's trackball mode. You can turn that off or on, but when I flick, you'll see there's some inertia to it. It keeps going, and I find that quite useful, especially in the cockpit if I'm looking around. Oh, okay, this covers another thing. At the minute this is in mouse mode. If I click in, I've also set the right joystick click. If I click in like that, that switches this to camera movement, right? So I can look around. And again, with the trackball mode, with that inertia, if I flick, it has some inertia to look back. If I didn't have trackball mode on, it would just stop the second my thumb lifts off, and it stops sensing capacitive touch. So yeah, that's another quite cool feature. And trackball mode is on by default, I'm pretty sure. If I go to the settings again, and then we look at, so that's going to be under the trackpad, it's going to be under the right trackpad behavior, which is as mouse. You go to settings, output, not output, there you go, trackball mode, that's on. That's how you have that inertia, and you can set the friction of that as well. If you want that to be less inertia as you flick, you can do so. Again, more you can mess around with. So that is how that works. Now, here's where we get into this territory of needing to configure things in DCS. So when I click this in, so right joystick click, I've got set as right joystick click. I haven't got it set as anything fancy, it's the default right stick click. And then if I press up on my left D-pad, which will give me the escape menu, and then I go to adjust controls, if you press a control in DCS, it'll show you what it's mapped to, but this is a quick way for me to show you what I mapped it to. So you can see, there you go, joy button 10, that ends up being. I've set that to the same as what you would press on the keyboard as left Alt and C, and that option is called clickable mouse cockpit mode. So you have to map that yourself. Okay, this is where downloading my controller configuration won't automatically do this. You have to go into DCS and tell it what you want that to do. And for me, I've mapped it to do that with this aircraft, right? So that way I can click in and I can click on options and switches and such inside the cockpit. And then if I click in again, that now becomes a camera movement, a way to look around. Okay, so that's how I have that set up. On that same premise, this is also kind of what I've done when it comes to the back grips. So I have the back grip buttons, the L4 buttons. I have those set up to, in this aircraft, keyboard shortcuts. You can see there, 7, 8, 9 and 0. So I don't use those keyboard shortcuts for anything in the MB339. So I've mapped them. So you've got 4 clickable buttons on the back, and that represents them. So I've got 7 on the top left, 8 on the top right, 9 on the bottom left, 0 on the bottom right. And then I have those mapped inside the game. So let's go back. Oops. Let's go back here. Let's go to the adjust controls so I can show you what I have those mapped to. I have the top left mapped to, and remember it's acting as a keyboard press now. So it's actually here you want to be double clicking on that. So you would double click on this, which I'm struggling with. There we go. And then when I click that, it clicks number 7 on the keyboard. That's what's emulating. And then I have zoom out slow. Okay, so zoom out slow, and then top right I have zoom in slow. So that's what I have for those 2 back grip buttons. And then that gives me my ability to zoom in and out, right? So when I'm holding the deck, I can now look around, I can zoom. That kind of gives me replicating a track IR setup, more or less now. So what I can do there, so that's how I have the back grip buttons. I have zoom, in and out slow on the back two, and then bottom left I have toe brakes, which you can see moving there, for my wheel brakes, and then bottom right, in this aircraft I have this engine relight, so you need that to be able to take off in the rain in the 339. But again, map it to whatever you want. Find a spare keyboard on key on the keyboard that you're not using, map it to any one of those back buttons, and then use it for stuff that's functional to your aircraft. Very important that you understand that. You download my particular mapping, you soon realize it's probably easier for you to just follow along and actually create your own than it is to just grab mine. But it gives you an idea. There are some things I've tweaked in mine you might find useful as a basis, saying that. Certainly when it comes on to the next point, which is the use of the gyro. Now, one thing you'll notice here is that when I let go of the deck and tilt the Steam Deck around, nothing happens. But if I place my thumb, just place it onto this right joystick, now when I tilt the deck I can look around. You'll also notice that the horizontal axis is quite wide, so I can swing all the way back and look behind me quite easily, but up and down not very sensitive. So I've set up individual sensitivity. I don't need a lot of look up, look down when I'm flying anyway. You might decide you want a lot more than that if you're dogfighting. But I do like to be able to look behind the aircraft quite easily, right? And then the second I let go of this, when I'm holding it, it's working. When I let go, it's locked again, okay? Now I think that's a super useful feature. One thing I explained in my previous video was that if I'm, say, doing an ILS approaching IMC, I can't see the runway, you know, I'm in the soup, and I'm concentrating on the console in front of me, I'm flying in, and then I'm getting to that point where I'm at my minimums, I should be able to see the runway. Rather than mess around here, all I have to do is hold there, peek up, can I see the runway? No, keep flying the instruments, carry on as I was, concentrate, and then peek up, ah yes, I can see the runway. Right, I can zoom out, I can go visual for my landing. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why I find that a really useful thing. It's just a quick way to look around, and again, really helps kind of emulate that track IR style setup. Now, let's have a quick look at how I have this configured. So let's go to the gyro here, which is down the bottom. So I have gyro behavior as mouse, and then when we go into the settings, I have the, under general, the sensitivity at 125%. That feels good to me. Vertical scale sensitivity I have reduced, as I showed you, because I don't need as much up and down movement. And then if we go down to output, I have smoothing cranked all the way up. That really makes it buttery and smooth when you tilt and move around. Really find that to be very nice. It's not quite as jittery, because your hand can move a little bit and shake, and a lot of that's just kind of translated out, so it only really picks up meaningful movements. So yeah, smoothing all the way up, and then the rest is default, except the other thing which is quite important. So here, gyro enable button, right stick touch. Now by default that's right stick touch and right trackpad touch. Now when I touch that to use it as a mouse, I don't want that triggering the gyro, because I'm looking around with the mouse. I don't also want on top of that me tilting the deck. So I only have it enabled by me touching the right stick. Again, how genius is this? Absolutely love that you have so much flexibility in this thing. It really is just brilliant. So yeah, that's how I have the gyro enabled. So with that, thumb on there, I can look around, I can zoom out, I can do what I want really. I then have, for me anyway, I have the X button for the back seat, and the reason I do that is so that I can have a nice wide view here. I can let go of the gyro there, go at the front view. I could have that as my zoomed in view. And again, this is one of those things where it's like, it's per aircraft based, as I keep mentioning. So I've got my nice zoomed in console view, and then I press X, and immediately I'm in the back of the aircraft with a nice zoomed out view. So I've got different views set up that I can just switch between, and that makes it really nice. So yeah, hopefully this has given you a bit more of an overview of how I have things set up. Now in terms of the other stuff, I have, just to give you an idea, I have the D-pad left and right configured for flap stages. I have up and down for the nose trim. I have the top left, this Steam options button here for my comms menu. I have this as nose wheel steering, position 1 and 2, so instructor seat, front seat, flaps, undercarriage, and then I have throttle increment up and down on the R buttons, so you can see those are done with the shoulder buttons. And then I have the triggers operating the rudder pedals. If I was in the F18, I wouldn't need 2 seats, so I wouldn't need to sacrifice 2 buttons for seat positions. I could have that as, I don't know, switch sensor of interest or something. It's up to you to decide how you want to get things done. Or you could have, you know, a shoulder button operate as a modifier in DCS. So I hold the L1, for instance, and suddenly all these buttons can do other things, like a second layer of controls. You've just got to think a little bit deeper when it comes to setting things up in DCS, but hopefully that will kind of get you on your way to getting this configured to a place where it's very useful to you. I think that kind of covers everything. If there's more you want to know, by all means drop it in the comments. Maybe there'll be a part 3 video where we can go through some more stuff, but I've done a little bit of combat, I've done a little bit of multiplayer, and I've done lots of single player, but I've actually edited missions in the mission editor on here with no problem, set things up and then gone and flown the mission. The Steam menu on the right button here, sorry, which allows you to set the set things as you want here. I have it at 60 Hertz and a 30 limiter, which will give you 30 FPS, 30 Hertz locked. And I find that allows me to run with a much prettier looking game. Like I said, I can crank the things up that I want to crank up, like the nice high-res cockpit. You know, that keeps everything good. And even when more stuff's going on, even in rain, which is quite heavy on the system with, you know, lots of clouds and stuff, it's holding 30. And you can see how smooth things is. In a flight sim, 30's perfectly doable. However, if you want more FPS, you can sacrifice a few more things, mess with the system settings, the graphics settings, and target something slightly higher. But for me, this just works really well. So I hope that has been incredibly useful for you. Please do let me know your thoughts in the comments. And yeah, hopefully I'll be doing some more Steam Deck stuff. I absolutely love this device, and I'm thrilled that I can run DCS on here. So take care, guys, and I look forward to speaking to you in the comments.